Hi, my name is Kiruba Shankar. I'm the host of the Movers and Shakers podcast, a show where we have conversations with business leaders, CEOs, and celebrities. This is a show that I do in partnership with Hindu Business Line and BL on Campus. In this edition, we have an interesting global guest, Nami Zarringhalam. You may not recognize his name, but you'll definitely recognize the app that he founded, Truecaller. Rings a bell? Yup, this is the app that can magically figure out the name of any phone number around the world. This is the app that sounded the death knell for spammers. Recently, I got to host Huddle Kerala, one of the largest startup conventions in Asia, in Kerala, of course, and Nami was there as a keynote speaker. So I spent some time on the sidelines of the conference and we had this very interesting conversation. So it's interesting how you co-founded these three companies. It's easy to start ideas and start off, but it's very challenging to scale, and you hit a goldmine in Truecaller. So tell us about how, when you saw those 10,000 downloads in 1 week and you knew this is going to work, what did you do next as a way to scale it up?
So the first thing we did was we decided that we will not be engaging with the other service that we built, Jobbit. We had actually already kind of sold off. So the first thing we did was decide that we're committed to Truecaller and we want to build on Truecaller.
So may I know why?
There was a couple of different reasons, but I think one of the most accurate kind of explanations of that is probably that when me and Alan first met at university, the reason we even connected was because both of us back in 2003 owned smartphones. He owned a Symbian smartphone, a Nokia Symbian smartphone, and I owned this brand called QTech, now becoming HTC, Windows Mobile smartphone. And Alan came over to me and said, "Hey, you have this phone, can I try it out?" And I tried out his phone. And that's how we connected back in 2003. So when we saw this opportunity of smartphones and the app stores in 2009, we thought to ourselves, like, this is the perfect timing. Plus we had this idea that we obviously had built something for and we saw a lot of traction for. It kind of made the case really easy for us. It was a very easy decision to go with Truecaller. So that's the main kind of genesis of Truecaller.
And plus, you do not want to chase three rabbits.
Yeah, of course. I mean, you cannot chase three rabbits as an entrepreneur, or even two rabbits. You have to pick one horse that you think is the one that you want to bet on. For us, it happened to be in a domain that we very much loved. We loved the smartphones and the opportunities that it gave. We were tech kind of geeks and gadget geeks already. So we loved the domain. The opportunity was there, and it was clear that the trend, looking around the world, that this was going to be something big. It wasn't just a small thing that is going to go away in 2 years or 3 years.
Got it. Now, the downloads are great, a lot of people using it, but you can only sustain your business if you have revenues flowing in. What did you do?
So we actually experimented with monetizing the service already from the beginning. The first version of Truecaller actually costed around $7.99 USDs, and it was a one-time fee when you download the app, because you have to remember this was 2009-2010 when most apps actually cost money.
Wow.
And then slowly we started to reduce the price and realized that we earned as much money, but we got more users. And we kept decreasing the price until there wasn't anything more to decrease on. And that's actually the time in the Truecaller journey that we decided that we wanted to start to look for do a fundraising, Series A, if you will, raising money from a VC. And our chairman actually looked at us that day when we asked him, like, hey, we think we should be raising money from a VC. And he looked at us and he said, you know, your world is going to change when you take in a VC. It's not the same thing as having angel investors, seed investors, etc. You just have to be to realize that and appreciate that that's going to change. And we asked him, like, how is it going to change? And he said, you know, I won't be able to explain it until you've experienced it. Then will you only know. But you have to realize that there is a change in terms of how what kind of expectations there will be on the company once you take this step. Are you sure you want to take this step? And we looked at each other. We said, yes, of course we want to take this step. This is the logical step for us, since we already had a product that had traction, and we knew that we could monetize on it. It was just a question of, do we want to scale? Do we want to reach scale, or do we want to reach monetization, like break even first? And so, you know, taking in investors was a natural next step for us.
Did his words come true?
Yes, absolutely. Things do change when you take in VC investments, and you know, I think a lot of people have different experiences from it. We had our first Series A coming in from a Finnish VC called OpenOcean. The MySQL founder had built this fund. And they were very excited about the community that Truecaller was building. Our second round, the Series B, was from Sequoia, and it was Sequoia India who actually invested, because we had started to have this traction in India. And later on, Kleiner Perkins and Atomico came in 2014. And so, you know, all of these investors have brought different things to the table. If you take Sequoia India, for example, what they brought you know, to the table for us was it was actually associated with that investment that they did, where we did our first travel to India, and we experienced how people were using Truecaller, and they helped us with recruiting people, for instance, our VP product today. And even the product team that sits in India today, so they keep being an engaged investor and contribute in that way. And then there's also a lot of strategic partnerships, etc., where you know, having a brand like Sequoia do the introduction is you know, very beneficial to most companies, I would say. So you know, it has been a great partnership for us. I think you also have to, what the difference, I would say, is that the expectations in terms of maturity of yourselves as leaders increases, and that's a good thing for most people that can handle it. It becomes a positive thing where your own self-development actually rapidly accelerates. Because of you know, those partially because of those expectations, but also partially because of the opportunities that you realize that you can have if you do take the chance to develop your leadership skills.
Got it. No, brilliant answer. So between these 4 VC firms, how much money did you raise?
So in totality, between these 4 VCs, we would have raised about 80 million USDs. You know, I think one of the wise things that we did throughout the journey is every time we took in VC money, we actually made sure that we enabled our early investors, the angel investors, to do a full or partial exit. This way we were able to keep our cap table clean, which makes it easier for the next investment that's going to happen. You don't have a messy cap table with a lot of different people, you know, sitting all across the world, and where you have to collect papers and approvals and, you know, these kind of mundane tasks. And it also makes the governance of the company much easier. So you know, that's one of the wise things that we did was 1/3 of each of those investments actually went in secondaries for those early investors, and they were obviously happy about that and about their investment because it allows them to then continue on to the next journey and do next investments, etc.
Nami, you're a computer scientist. I don't know about Alan. I'm guessing he's also
too,
the.
yes.
I don't think both of you had any finance background at all. So how did you figure the nuts and bolts of finance and investment?
Well, early on, I think one of the most important things that we did was we started to seek help for this, and it was actually the initial time, like I would say the first year or so of Truecaller's lifetime. It was actually Alan's wife, who's an authorized accountant, who helped us fill in the papers, sort out our taxes, etc., etc. So that was that time, and that's how we got started. I think most people would be wise to take some help, whether it's from people that you know or externally, to get that help, so you can focus on building your product, building the experience that you need to have for your users, and not think about all these other things. It does come at a cost, of course, but I think that cost is manageable as long as you're in that smaller scale.
Beautiful. Now, in your initial days of Truecaller, you had a very traumatic experience when Google kicked you out of their app store, which means your entire business model can really come crashing down your bill. So what lessons have you learned, and what advice would you give for people starting out in the platform?
Well, I think it's important to follow the guidelines and the policies that different platforms provide, and to realize as well that on the other side of these companies, there's human beings that are actually trying to make sure that the community of developers, for instance, or the app store that they're developing, that it thrives, and that's their core KPIs. And so there's a set of guidelines that they set up, and it's important that you follow them. The reason we got kicked out was simply because we had reviewed our own app several times. The reason we reviewed it was because the Play Store was in such a nascent stage. You couldn't actually comment on reviews, which you can do obviously now. But back then, we would review our own app several times every day to tell people, like, instead of writing a bad review, please email us on support and we'll help you. That was obviously against the guidelines, which was the reason why we got kicked out of the Play Store for a full year. And a lot of people became very nervous, including both me and Alan. But we decided to stay loyal to the product that we wanted to build and the experience that we wanted to give also to the Android users. So we kept developing the product, even though we were not on the Play Store. We just published it on our website. It wasn't obviously having the same growth as Android during 2012 to 2013 had fantastic momentum, and it still continues to do. So we lost out on a whole year of kind of growth throughout this period, which was, like you explained it was a traumatic experience. But at the end of the day, I think we came out of it with a bigger understanding for how these bigger giants, if you will, how they kind of work, and what our role is in that ecosystem. So I think it was a rewarding experience, and what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Oh, very true. And I think it's a valuable experience, and the fact that you stuck on, and you showed the grit and determination. I think that's the awesome part. Now, is it true that almost all of Truecaller's growth has been organic? Is it true that you actually had zero paid advertising?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think the 1 year where we spent money to acquire users was in 2012, when we spent money to acquire users in Jordan, based on that we thought that we had found our golden KPI, our golden metric, that would allow us to demonstrate that we can replicate what was happening in a similar market, Lebanon, where the penetration of Truecaller users had grown massively over a short period of time. And we wanted to replicate that in a similar market, so we spent money to acquire users, about 2,000 euros in 2012 that we spent to acquire users in Jordan, and it was successful. And with that thesis, we kind of went out to start to raise money. Obviously, we didn't continue to acquire users, because what happened was that India started to grow organically by itself. Also, I'd like to mention that the organic growth also came from that we had supported other platforms like Symbian earlier on, and these Symbian users were using Truecaller because of our partnership with Nokia. So when Nokia wasn't releasing new handsets, what these users ended up doing was getting a new Android phone, and the first application that they would download was Truecaller, and that's how we kind of started to grow really quickly also in India.